Premier Li Qiang delivers his government work report as the annual session of the NPC opens. The Premier unveils a GDP growth target of about 5% for 2024, stressing the need to boost domestic demand and attract foreign investment. And in South Korea, striking doctors' licenses will be suspended for at least 3 months. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The opening meeting of the second session of the 14th National People's Congress took place in Beijing today. Premier Li Qiang delivered his 31-page government work report on the opportunities and challenges in the country's economy. Li revealed a GDP growth target of about 5% for this year, as he underscored the need to expand domestic demand and attract foreign investment to buoy the economy. The annual meeting of the National People's Congress was held at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. In attendance were President Xi Jinping alongside other state leaders and chief executives of Hong Kong and Macau. Premier Li Qiang delivered the first work report in his tenure looking back at the country's economy last year. China's GDP grew 5.2% to reach more than 126 trillion yuan in 2023. Li said the positive outcome did not come easily, while admitting more work could be done by the government. The Premier added that as the favorable conditions are stronger than the unfavorable ones this year, China will seize the opportunities to drive positive and sustained growth in the economy. Li also unveiled a GDP growth target of about 5% for this year, with the goal to keep the growth rate of residents' income in sync with the growth rate of the economy. On the government's financial situation, the Premier announced a budget deficit of more than 4 trillion yuan this year. Starting this year, the government will issue ultra-long-term special bonds to implement major national strategies and build up security capacity in key areas for the next few consecutive years. In the first year, 1 trillion yuan worth of bonds will be issued. Li Qiang said government departments at different levels have implemented policies to help stabilize economic growth and employment. He said the government will have to get used to tightened resources, so they will need to use public money more effectively. Also mentioned is the need to maintain the exchange rate of the yuan at a reasonable range with robust, flexible, and precise monetary policies. Li also stressed efforts should be dedicated to expanding domestic demand while attracting and relaxing curbs on foreign investment. Premier Li Qiang said in the government work report that China will focus on the modernization of its industrial sector by developing new productive forces. Min Ai reports.
The term new productive forces refer to the advanced application of new technology, which has become an important policy of the central government. In his work report, Premier Li Qiang said the country will make traditional industries more high-end and greener. Li wants China to establish more made-in-China brands that are internationally influential. The Premier also mentioned the need to enhance the country's development in such areas as hydrogen power, new materials, and innovative medicine. Another important issue in the work report is the employment and unemployment situations in the country. Last year, the unemployment rate in cities was 5.2%, and it is expected that more than 10 million students will graduate from universities and colleges this year and look for work. The Premier said authorities are concerned about the employment issue and will make it a priority with strengthened policies. The government will also raise the income of farmers through different means. Meanwhile, China has set its target grain production at 1.3 trillion or more this year. To achieve a rural vitalization, the country will strengthen the infrastructure systems in villages. The central government also hopes to boost childbirth by offering help in bringing up the kids and assistance with their education. The government will also raise the basic pension for the elderly and will implement a personal pension scheme for the aging population. News 9, TVB News.
China will increase its defense spending by 7.2% this year, with a budget of 1.66 trillion yuan. Premier Li Qiang said military forces have to be combat-ready to safeguard the country's sovereignty and development interests. On diplomacy, Li said Beijing will continue to practice an independent and peaceful foreign policy. He said China will work towards win-win relationships as opposed to hegemony and bullying. On the governments of Hong Kong and Macau, Premier Li Qiang stressed the need to continue upholding the one country, two systems principle. Chief Executive John Lee said he was encouraged by Li's remarks, adding his administration will work full steam ahead to drive the economy and improve citizens' livelihood. Chief Executive John Lee and Macau's Chief Executive Ho Yesing at the opening meeting of this year's National People's Congress. Chief Executive John Lee was seated at number 23. Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan affairs were put near the concluding remarks of Premier Li Qiang's government work report.
坚持依法治港治澳。
The Premier stressed the importance of resolutely implementing the one country, two systems principle, as well as upholding the directions of Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong and the city's high degree of autonomy, and that Hong Kong and Macau are administered by patriots to ensure the long-term prosperity and stability. On Taiwan, Li said Beijing insists on the One China principle and the 1992 consensus. Li also stressed Beijing resolutely opposed separatist activity on Taiwan independence and foreign interference. Before President Xi Jinping left the hall, he gave a nod to Chief Executive John Lee. In an afternoon seminar with Hong Kong students studying in Beijing, Chief Executive John Lee said he felt encouraged by Beijing's support of Hong Kong in the work report.
喺中央嘅指導支持之下，
The CE also said he will leverage well the opportunities given to Hong Kong via the Greater Bay Area and the Belt and Road Initiative. Zhang Fan from China Electric Equipment, also a delegate to the National People's Congress, added Hong Kong has an edge to help the nation cement its inner tech industry with a better digital infrastructure. Chief Executive John Lee and some lawmakers who attended the NPC meeting today left the event early and are returning to Hong Kong. The lawmakers are scheduled to have meetings about legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law tomorrow. Speaking in Beijing, John Lee said he had asked the administration to complete the legislation as soon as possible. The public consultation on Article 23 legislation ended last month. The government said they will analyze the consultation results before presenting it to the Legislative Council. Meanwhile, meetings will be held by 3 subcommittees in LegCo on Wednesday to discuss the consultation results. In South Korea, thousands of striking junior doctors face proceedings to suspend their medical licenses. This as authorities push for police investigations targeting leaders of the walkout that have disrupted hospital operations across the country. Tracy Furness has more.
Nearly 9,000 junior doctors in South Korea remain on strike after 2 weeks protesting a government plan to enroll thousands more students annually into medical schools. The strikers defied a government order to return to work by February 29th and now face the suspension of their licenses and prosecution. Absentee doctors account for 72% of the total number nationwide. The country's second Vice Health Minister, Park Min-soo, said, "We are considering reporting them to the police, at least those leading the walkout." On Monday, the Health Ministry sent officials to more than 100 hospitals to confirm the absence of the striking doctors and to begin steps to suspend their licenses. Park said the doctors' licenses would be suspended for at least 3 months and doctors would be given opportunities to respond before suspensions take effect. The trainee doctors have left their patients defenseless and have left emergency rooms and intensive care units, Park continued. He said this was irresponsible, betraying their professional and ethical responsibilities. After the penalty takes effect, the striking doctors' training time will no longer accumulate, and the time for them to obtain qualifications will be delayed by 1 year. Under South Korea's medical law, doctors who defy orders to resume work can be punished with 3 years in prison or a 30 million won fine, with their medical licenses suspended for up to 1 year. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
And still ahead, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that states cannot remove Trump from the ballot. French lawmakers approve a bill to enshrine abortion rights in the country's constitution. And villain bashing in Causeway Bay. Welcome back. Ahead of today's Super Tuesday in the U.S., the Supreme Court Monday unanimously rejected Colorado's effort to disqualify Donald Trump from appearing on the state's primary election ballot. reserving Colorado's high court ruling that Trump could not serve as president again, as he was involved with an insurrection. The U.S. Supreme Court said that states have no right to make that call. It is also former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley's last chance to stop Trump from clinching the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. NBC has more.
The U.S. Supreme Court dealing a final blow to states trying to ban former President Trump from the ballot. In a unanimous decision, the justices effectively leaving it up to voters to decide if the former president returns to the White House. Mr. Trump praising today's ruling.
The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that.
The justices rejecting a Colorado state court's ruling finding Mr. Trump ineligible to be president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, a largely untested clause of the Constitution passed after the Civil War, disqualifying those who engage in insurrection from holding public office again. An elections official in Maine and a judge in Illinois later doing the same, banning the Republican frontrunner from the ballot in those states in light of his actions on January 6. Today's ruling from the High Court now ending all similar efforts to disqualify Mr. Trump from the ballot.
While most states were thrilled to have me, there were some that didn't, and they didn't want that for political reasons.
The justices today saying that patchwork of different rulings across the country cannot stand, finding responsibility for enforcing Section 3 against federal office holders and candidates rests with Congress and not the states. But at the same time, the three liberal justices accusing their conservative colleagues of going too far by ruling Congress must enact new legislation in order to ban a presidential candidate. Writing, this ruling will make it harder to bar an oath-breaking insurrectionist from becoming president. Conservative Justice Barrett cautioning this court should turn the national temperature down, not up.
French lawmakers on Monday overwhelmingly approved a bill that enshrined abortion rights in the country's constitution. This made France the only country to explicitly guarantee a woman's right to voluntarily terminate a pregnancy. The measure was approved in a 780 to 72 vote in the Palace of Versailles. It specifies that the law determines the conditions by which is exercised by the freedom of women to have recourse to an abortion, which is guaranteed. The historic move was proposed by President Emmanuel Macron as a way to prevent the kind of rollback of abortion rights seen in the United States. Abortion enjoys wide support in France across most of the political spectrum and has been legal since 1975. The French measure is seen as going a step further than was the case in the former Yugoslavia, whose 1974 constitution said that the person is free to decide on having children. Today marks the Jingzhi Festival, a day in the Chinese lunar calendar that literally means the awakening of insects. But in Hong Kong, even more popular is the day's villain-hitting rituals. We went to check out the traditional custom. On this day of Jingzhi every year is a bustling sight underneath the Canal Road flyover in Causeway Bay. Shoes and even heels are used in this villain-bashing ritual. Some citizens came here in hopes of warding off misfortune and bad people in life. They include Miss Ng, who hopes to hit the image of a thief who stole things from her. She says she hopes the ritual can give herself some sense of relief. And this man who had been out of a job for half a year during the pandemic. He said he hopes to shoo away bad luck, but he admits what matters most is working hard. Some vendors also told us they hope, apart from locals, there could be more tourists who are interested in experiencing this ritual and tradition, popular in Hong Kong and Guangdong.
I have tried it out before. I think it's interesting to experience, and I think it's crazy how many people are lining up to come here.
The idea of villain bashing is kind of unusual, so I'm interested to find out how it works.
This mainland tourist said the Hong Kong government can further promote this local tradition, which is a form of intangible cultural heritage. Some stalls said this year no customers came to bash on political figures. The stall owner said business is 20 to 30% less than last year. Under the Chinese calendar, Jingzhi is the day when hibernating insects awake from their slumber. Legends have it that ancient people will bash around with incense and herbs to keep pests away, which later evolves into hitting images of villains and enemies. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.